In this video, we're going to look at two methods used in Google Apps Script. The first is called the every method. It looks at an array of values and checks to see if every single value in that array meets a certain condition that you specify. The second method is called the sum method, and it's kind of the opposite of the every. It looks at an array of values and checks to see if any at all meet a certain criteria, so one or more. We're eventually going to apply those two methods to the data set you see here. So I have daily calls made by different customer service reps for the past week. And the management at this fake company likes each rep to have 50 or more calls per day. If that condition is met, so every single day has 50 or more volume-wise, that rep gets a $500 bonus. So we're going to use the every method to check and see if that happens. Another thing they want to look for is if any given day of the week the call volume exceeds or is equal to 75, so 75 or more, because that's considered way above average, and management wants to look and see if any day meets that criteria because they want to review the call log to see what was done right that helped them reach that level so that they can improve upon the call volume. So the first thing we want to do is get into the Apps Script editor window. You can do that by going to Extensions and then Apps Script. I'm going to begin with a very simple example of how you can use the every method. So we'll call this function myEvery. I'm going to create a variable called myArray. Arrays are expressed inside brackets in AppScript. So I'm going to make a simple array of numbers. So we'll just use 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to create a second variable called output. And this is going to be equal to our myArray variable we just created. And then we're going to use the every method. So the every method allows you to pass a function to all of the values in your array. So it begins with the keyword function, and it has the same syntax structure as a function, just like this one here. So we have keyword function, parentheses. Now inside these parentheses, we're going to add a parameter. It's just a variable. We'll just call it number. You can call it really anything you want. And it just represents each individual element inside the array. So then we have a set of curly brackets. Inside these curly brackets is what we want to do. Well, we want to return something, and what the every method returns is true or false. It checks to see if every element in your array meets a condition. So we're going to use the keyword return because we want to return true or false, and we want to check to see if our number variable is greater than or equal to 5. So what this does is it looks at each individual number in our array and checks to see if every single one of them meets this condition, greater than or equal to 5. If they all meet this condition, then this will return true. If one or more does not meet that condition, it's going to return false. So we can log this out. I'm going to log out our output variable, and I'll hit save. I'll hit run. Now at this point you might need to authorize this. I've already authorized this, so I don't have to takes a little bit because I'm recording the screen, so you can see that returns true because every single value meets that criteria. Now, if I change this to 3 for the first number, hit save and run, this is going to return false. So that's how the every method works. So now I'm just going to copy this and show you how the sum method works. So we'll just call this my sum. Instead of the every method, we're going to use the sum method. So we'll say greater than or equal to 8. Now, since we have two functions now, we need to make sure we select the right one. So I need to select my sum, click run. That returns true because we have one or more that meets that condition. Now, if I change this to 9, it's going to return false. Easy enough. Now we're ready to apply these two methods to the data on our sheet. So in this first example, we want to look at each row and see if each rep maintained 50 or more and give them a $500 bonus if that is the case, 0 if that is not the case. So to save time, I've already created the code, so I'm going to drop it in here and run through it. So we have a function called myEvery. We have a variable for spreadsheet, which is the spreadsheet application, get active spreadsheet for the one we're in now. We have a variable called sheet, which is equal to our spreadsheet variable, and then get sheet by name, sheet1. That is the sheet we're currently on. We have a variable called range, which is equal to our sheet variable, get the range B3 through G12 and get those values. So that's an array range variable, which holds all of these values here in a 2D array. We then have a array variable called result array. Right now it's an empty array, but what we're eventually going to do is check each row in our range and either push $500 or 0 into this result array variable. So we have a for loop because we want to loop through each individual row one at a time in our range 2D array and check to see if all the values in a given row are greater than or equal to 50. So a loop repeats that step based on a starting point and an ending point that you specify. So first we define our starting point. We have a counter variable called row. We're going to set it equal to a value of 0 because in AppScript, array variables start at a count of 0. So the first row is actually row 0. Then we define how long we want our loop to run for. We want the loop to run so long as our row count or counter value is less than the length of our range variable. The length of our range variable is the rows. So that count actually begins at 1, so it's going to be 1 more than what we actually need because our count for the row variable starts at 0. So it's going to run so long as it's less than the length of our row range variable. Then we define how we want our row counter to increment in. We want it to increment in increments of 1, so that's just row plus plus. Next, inside these curly brackets, we have what we want to do while the loop is running. We have an if statement. We want to check to see if our range variable row, so when you want to look at individual rows of this 2D array variable, we have a reference to our range variable, and then right after that, a set of brackets because that means row. So inside it, we have our row variable, which means whatever row we're currently on in our loop. Right now, at the very beginning, that would be row 0, the first row. So we're going to look at the first row, apply the every method to that, where we have a function, and then we have a variable called C that represents each value in that row, whatever row we're on, and we want to return true if each individual value in that row is greater than or equal to 50. So if this returns true, then what we want to do is, with our empty results array, we want to push a value of $500, and that $500 is enclosed in a set of brackets because we want to create a two-dimensional array. It's actually going to be one column by 10 rows, but it's still a two-dimensional array of what I just said, one column by 10 rows. So that makes this a 2D array. So the outer array brackets is the collection of rows. Each individual inner bracket is a single row. So we push a row of 500 into that array. If this condition is not met, all of the values are not greater than or equal to 50, then it pushes a row of $0 into this array. This loop will keep running until the row is no longer less than the length of our range variable. And then once it has filled this array with all of those values, we reference our sheet variable get that range h3 through h12, and we set the values to the values of our result array variable, which should be filled at this point. So now I'm going to hit run. What we should see is this area get populated here. And there it is. You can see every call for this week was above 50. This rep gets $500. You can see here this rep went below 50 on Wednesday, so they did not get the bonus, and so on and so on. So in this final example, we're going to apply the sum method to our data set. We want to look at each rep's calls and see if any of the calls were 75 or above. If so, we want to populate review call logs over here. If not, we just want to leave the cell blank. So I am going to copy what we've already created and just modify it. So we'll call this my sum. All of this will still be the same. We want our loop to run the same way. I'm going to change our method here from every to sum. We want to check and see if any of the calls are greater than or equal to 75. Instead of 500, we want to say review call logs. For our false statement, we just want to populate that as empty, so we just have two double quotes. And our result range, we want this to be column I. So I'm going to hit save. We're going to change this to our second function, my sum. And when I run this, we should see the information get populated here based on anything that is over 75 for any single day. And there it is. So you can see here on Thursday, this rep had 76. Here on Wednesday, this rep had 75. Well, that is all for now. Thanks for watching.